He gets exactly what he asked for. This happened when I, 20, at the time, female, was a junior in college. Here's some context. I had taken a long weekend trip to Florida with a friend of mine to visit her brother and go to the Universal Studios Fright Night Halloween event, which was awesome. By the way, we had an amazing trip, and we were on the plane about to head home. This was only my second ever time with air travel. We didn't have much when I was growing up, so vacations were not a regular thing, and the ones we took were low-key. So, there I was, just excited to be flying in my coach seat, waiting to take off. And we kept waiting. It became clear that there was a problem with the plane when the flight attendants started calling various passengers to exit to be placed on different flights so they'd make their necessary connections. Eventually, after around 40 minutes, it was just my friend and I plus around 6 other people. And then it was our turn to leave the plane. We were sort of near the end of the group tromping back out into the waiting area. One couple, probably in their mid-50s, had stormed up ahead of us, and by the time my friend and I emerged from the gate entrance, the rude husband was already berating the pair of attendants, who, to their credit, remained poised and calm. They tried to reassure him, but he was talking over them. "This is unacceptable. You better get me the same seats we had on that flight." He had the first row in coach, the one with no seats in front of it and therefore with extra leg room. By then, the rest of us had gathered around, and the attendants began addressing the whole group, offering reassurances, filling us in that there was a critical problem with the plane, which made me very glad for the change. Despite the inconvenience, the rude husband was going off through all of this, and when the attendants left to make arrangements for us all, he and his wife sat there and he continued his commentary to his poor wife. "Unacceptable. How dare they? Better have same seats," and so on. Shortly, the attendants returned, and the man practically rushed them. "I demand you make this right." The attendant smiled and said, "You guys are all set, sir," and she smiled at him specifically. "I'm very happy to tell you that we have a flight leaving shortly, and we were able to give you and your wife the exact same seats as you had booked on the previous flight." Rude husband, "I should hope so. That's the least you can do." And he huffily returns to his seat. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just waiting. The attendant then turns to us, and she says, "And I'm happy to let everyone else know that you'll all be flying first class with us today." Rude husband was furious and immediately jumped up to demand why they weren't flying first class, while the rest of us just sat there in a state of stunned glee. The attendant just informed the man that she'd given him his request, and didn't stick around for more abuse. The wait wasn't long, and soon my friend and I were boarded into the Unicorn, fabled place that is first class. As a poor air travel newbie, it was like some fantasy land. Huge seats, real hot washcloths, and though we were underage and couldn't partake of the free cocktail, we did get to choose from a basket of distinctive Pepperidge Farm cookies. And the food, we got a whole meal, which was truly delicious, with real crystal salt and pepper shakers at each place setting and actual metal cutlery. Meanwhile, rude husband is irate. My friend and I were in the last row of first class, which only had around 8 seats, and we could hear him heaping abuse on the coach attendants, going off on how those kids don't deserve first class and how they should have gotten them. They're older. They should be respected, not some kids. Someone else who was in first, not from our original plane, caught on and was quite tickled with the man's ire. Then, the best part of all happened. The flight attendant in our section overheard rude husband's tirade, with language specifically directed at my friend and me. Who do those kids think they are? As unworthy of the honor he should have been granted. The attendant shook his head and addressed me and my friend. I'm sorry about that. Let me take care of this for you. And he closed the curtain to the coach cabin. Rude husband realized what was happening. Which makes it even getter. I got one last look at his red, irate face before he was gone forever. It was glorious. Honestly gotten more joy out of reading this MC than any other. Congrats on your karmic first-class seats. Dash. You can always gauge someone's true colors by how they treat people in service work. Especially when a lot of the time, said service workers have a lot of leeway to change your experience for better or for worse. Had something similar back in March 2001 when I was a lot younger. Flight from Philly to DFW was late due to bad weather in flight. Pilot said we had to fly a bit out of our way due to a storm and at 25,000 feet due to turbulence. Was at the back of the plane, so one of the last off. Run over to the connecting gate and get there to see a plane there, but the jetway already pushed back. There were some other passengers, 6-ish, IIRC, who missed it as well. I think my flight, as they said they got in late, but could have been others. And I arrived to them all berating the two gate agents and screaming how the jetway must be put back so they can board. I take a seat near the commotion and wait for the agent to rebook everyone. When they're done, I go up and say I also missed the connection and ask for the best way for me to get to SFO. She responds, the best way is first class, with a smile and prints me a ticket for the next flight. Like op. Was under 21 so couldn't drink on board. But I still remember that to this day. Wouldn't expect that nowadays. I think most airlines flag agents who rebook people into a higher class of service without a very good reason. But always makes me smile when the memory comes back. Dude should have been grounded. This is just perfect. Arrogance rewarded and hearing it unfold after. Reminds me of my first trip to Las Vegas. Back in the 90s. We got to our hotel at 1 in the morning. And at check-in, the people at the desk next to us were having a shit fit about being on the 10th floor. Same as their friends. The desk clerks had a confab. And ours came back, explained the situation, and asked, would you mind terribly if we placed you a little higher up? All the same to us. So we were gracious and accommodating. Which is how we ended up with a strip view jacuzzi suite at the top of the Luxor Pyramid. I really hope the folks next to us appreciated being on down 10 with their friends. It's been 26 years. And I still think of that with delight. I have worked in the airlines for 13 to 14 years as a mechanic. Got my fair amount of flights. But when shit like this happens, just be polite and work with them to find a solution. I was upgraded to business on an Emirates flight when my SAS flight was delayed too much to reach a connecting flight. I was supposed to sleep on that night flight, but I was not able to. Just wanted to get the most out of it. So just dress nice and play ball with the representatives. Priceless. Folks think they need to be rude and mean to get service. When people working customer service jobs more often go out of their way for those who are polite. You'd hope he learned a lesson, but given he was still whining and yelling on the place instead of sitting in the seat he argued so much for with his head down, probably not. As the son of an airline employee, customer service agent for Air Canada, so work stuff like check-in, gates, etc. It always delights me when I hear my mom tell me stories of rude passengers not getting the best possible solution because they were so rude of standoffish. It's even better when respectful people like yourself end up getting the better solution simply because they acted respectfully and understood. Sometimes simply happen. I had a similar experience. This was around 15 years ago, and I was flying to Japan for my first time and staying with the family whose son had home-stayed with us. Still friends to this day. When I got to Atlanta for my connection flight, the plane had issues and I was in coach and cramped because I'm 6 feet 8 inches. Some couple was also being twats and flight attendant wasn't having it. She has seen me cramped and still being polite, not making a fuss, and pointed me out to the twat couple. He's got more of a right to be complaining. Yet he's the nicest one here. To me. Come with me, sir. She got me bumped to business class with a lot more legroom for my, I think, 14 hours flight from Atlanta to Tokyo. Was so appreciative of that attendant and never forgot her generosity getting that done for me. I had an experience semi-related. I fly a lot for a living. I work overseas and my flights are rarely less than 2 connections and totaling more than 18 hours. I always fly business overseas or first for domestic. Was returning from the Middle East, landed in JFK and had a connection to Tampa. Got to the gate and there was an older couple, 70s, I'm guessing, who were trying to get upgraded to first, but there was only one upgrade available. I went to the counter after hearing this and offered to take a coach seat so they could have my seat in first. The older lady was surprised and grateful but didn't want to accept because she was worried about me losing money for the ticket I'd bought. I assured her my company was paying and it'd be no problem. After our tickets were swapped and the couple boarded, the desk agent called me over to say how it made her day to see compassion shown when there's usually so much anger and selfishness. She managed to get me a first-class meal and I got free drinks, alcohol, for my trip. It was nice to do something nice for someone, and the service people got a brief respite from the hysteria. I hope at some point you moved the curtain aside, made eye contact, and dabbed the corner of your mouth with a pressed linen napkin. Man, that must have felt so good for that flight attendant. He got what he wanted and you got what you deserved. Satisfied ending. As a seasoned veteran of travel, the best advice I can give anyone is never piss off the locals. This includes airline, hotel, and other service industry folks. Politeness, kindness, and patience go a really long way. This is beautiful. I love this. This is why I'm always polite to workers, because 1. It's not their fault I'm being inconvenienced and they're just doing their job. And 2. They might be very nice in return. One of my best stories, Nomic also involved an airline. It was around Christmas, and I was flying out of Boston. The airport had been hit by weather, and flights were delayed or canceled. I was in line to get rebooked, and the person ahead of me in line was yelling and screaming at the clerk. When it was my turn, I was calmly talking to her, explaining where I needed to go, and that if at all possible I needed to be there by the next evening. She thanked me for being calm and polite, and I answered that I assumed she would be doing the most she could for me, and joked that if she wanted I could tell and scream, but I was pretty sure that wouldn't help. She told me I could be on the next flight, and have 3 connections to my destination, or catch the 6 a.m. one, have a direct flight, and make it home before the earlier one. I opted for the direct flight, and when she gave me the boarding pass I was surprised to see I was bumped to first. I was never happy to have had a rise person in front of me. This reminds me of the time my friend and I went to see the music of the Beach Boys being performed in a concert hall. As soon as the first big hit started playing, we jumped out of our seats and started dancing. It didn't take long for the people behind us to complain to the usher. The usher removed us from our seats and upgraded us to box seats right above the stage, where other people were dancing too. Looking down into the audience where we were originally seated, several other people eventually got up and started dancing in front of the same people who had complained earlier. Perfect and just MC. Long story short, me and my son were bumped up to first class just because I was nice to some airline personnel. We were like in seats 1 and 2 right behind the pilot's cockpit. It was divine. Pays to be nice to people.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.